These are sketches of alien abductors made by their victims. Most report being confronted by UFOs emanating bright and paralyzing lights. Others claim to have been abducted from their cars and homes. When they return, they're unable to account for their whereabouts for hours or even days. Abductees say they're often restrained and subjected to painful physical tests, invasive procedures focused on sexual organs. Some people who claim to have been abducted exhibit round depressions called scoop marks, as if a layer of cells had been surgically removed from their bodies. Others suffer long cuts and straight-line gashes. Bud Hopkins has written 2 books on abductions and has interviewed hundreds of abductees.
You get very, very few hoaxes because a person is calling you saying, I don't know what happened to me, I might be losing my mind, I don't want you to call back to my house because I don't want my wife to know that I've talked to you, I don't know what's happening, etc. And they insist on anonymity and so forth. There's hardly the motivation for a hoaxer in that. There's no way that you cover yourself with glory.
Oh, I never thought about UFOs. It never really occurred to me at all about even their possibility until I was 17 and it was in my face and there was no way to avoid it.
Chris Hinton is a 42-year-old assistant building contractor in Washington, D.C. He provided this interview in hopes of helping other victims. Over the course of a week in the summer of 1972, Chris was helping his brother prepare for a driving test. Each night, they saw several UFOs in the sky.
We see a bright light over the horizon just shoot across the sky, lightning speed, and then stop suddenly on a dime. This voice explains, as this light projects off the side of the ship, we're hypnotizing you, and there's no need to be afraid, you just relax, and we are going to communicate telepathically.
Chris's teenage encounters triggered forgotten memories. Replays of other alien abductions that stretched back into his childhood years.
When I was 4 years old, I had been lost in the woods for several hours. And 2 figures about my size came up, one on either side of me from behind. And they said, "Will you come with us, Chris?" All I saw was a ramp. It looked like a metallic ramp that entered a doorway, and they put me on this table and they clamped my skull into like a vise of some sort. I remember I just couldn't move, and I saw this contraption. It was metallic, and they clamped it firm. I could not move. And they rammed something up the back of my head, and it hurt like the devil. I was screaming. And they packed me up and walked me out of the ship. And I went running back home.
By 1992, stories like Chris's had become so widespread that a special conference was convened at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology to investigate alien abductions. Sponsored by the Fund for UFO Research, it was attended by prominent scientists, abduction victims, and UFO researchers.
Studies have been conducted that show that abductees who don't know anything about the UFO subject, they don't know what other people have reported, still will come out with the identical story in exactly the same sequence.
But scientists at the conference wanted hard proof.
We hear tales of people being abducted. We hear heartfelt stories. These people are clearly affected by what they've imagined or seen or something. But we never get a real piece of evidence.
Bud Hopkins believes he's found the kind of evidence scientists are looking for here in Salt Lake City, Utah. This woman and her son had an abduction experience. To protect their privacy, they requested we mask their identities. Their ordeal began on a drive home from a family get-together.
And all of a sudden, we were hit by that bright light, just a bright light. That came from nowhere. I couldn't see the road. I knew I was moving. I looked over at him and I told him I can't see the road. And that's the last of my memory.
My recollection is my mother let go of the steering wheel, and at that point I reached over and grabbed it.
I can't remember going home. I can't remember the next day.
Like many abductees, memories of intrusive alien surgery began to haunt Joan. A year later, an accident would reveal some extraordinary evidence.
I hit my head on the fireplace, and I was out unconscious for about 45 minutes. I woke up and made it to the phone and called my parents, and they came and took me to the hospital. And they x-rayed my head.
Suspecting, I suppose, a skull fracture, right?
Yeah, but there was no skull fracture. It was fine. But the doctor came running through ER yelling, "How did you get this metal in your head?" Well, I had no idea, neither did my parents. I've never had a head injury to where I could get metal in my brain.
The radiologist report indicates an oval metallic object of unknown origin is lodged in the parasagittal region of the woman's brain. The official hospital report goes on to state, the appearance is unusual for an artifact, and certainly the pattern would be worthy of pursuit.
What did you think? I mean, did you...
Skeptics insist that reports of alien abductions are the product of some mass subconscious hysteria. But if they are fantasies, how do we explain the radiologist report?
In the USA for years, there have been meetings organised by psychologists specialising in those who have been contacted or abducted. The aim is to help them to overcome their trauma. Many elements of their experiences coincide, which gives them more credibility. The psychologist R. Leo Sprinkle is involved in the project. He is one of the foremost researchers on the subject.
My own personal view of the majority of persons is that the majority of persons are normal in their psychological functioning. That is, they are not psychotic, they are not neurotic, they are intelligent and educated, and they are, as a group, they are sincere in describing what they believe has happened.
Even the psychologist, Richard Boylan, a well-known researcher on the subject, has followed contacts for several years. This is how he sees it.
I've worked with over 165 people who've had these extraterrestrial encounters. I'm understanding of their feelings and can bring them to understand what they've been through is not some strange thing that only happened to them, but that it's happened to thousands of other people as well.
In recent years, abductions by small humanoids with a big head has been much discussed. These are identified by the grey colour of their skin. There have been many incidents in the USA, but also in Europe and elsewhere. Bud Hopkins is one of the most leading researchers on the subject. He has followed many hundreds of cases all over the world. He helped those kidnapped to overcome their trauma through hypnosis. Even if the victims can consciously remember the events anyway. Often the abductions happen at night. The grey beings can go through walls, materializing and not materializing. They communicate telepathically. It is said that the grey people can take the person to the spaceship through a tunnel of light. The kidnapped person is then subjected to a medical examination, with several samples taken. Sperm is almost always taken from men, and ovum from women. These abductees often have scars on the body of a victim, like these 10-year-old ones. The victim discovered how these were done after an abduction experience, which he can only remember under hypnosis, and which was confirmed by witnesses. Let's respect his desire for privacy. Bud Hopkins shows numerous examples of wounds.
Next slide.
In some of these, small objects were discovered.
Next slide, please. Which are extremely interesting.
They were said to be planted during the kidnapping.
4 cases I'm aware of.
They've been studied in university laboratories.
The basic purpose of this seems to have to do with the need of the aliens to remove human ova and sperm or cells to take our DNA, our genetic makeup, and to mix it with their own, as if what they're trying to do is to create a hybrid mix. The woman might be re-abducted months or even years later and shown a tiny baby, which is a strange mix of human and alien characteristics, and they are told in the UFO that this is your child, and they are asked to bond with the child, to hold it. In other words, their connection with us, particularly on an emotional level, is very slight. It's as if they don't understand human emotions. And just as they have been trying to learn about human reproduction, I think they're trying to learn about human emotion. I think they're very interested in simple things to us, like how we care for our children, how we care for one another, how romantic relationships begin. All the things that make us most human, they seem very interested in that because it seems that they don't have that themselves. They seem to have their own needs, their own projects, their own agenda. And it does not seem to have anything to do with the good of mankind. At the same time, human beings have a whole group of fears, paranoid fears of enemies or devils or whatnot, demons. There's no sense that they have ever deliberately wanted to harm anybody or tried to harm anybody. This is what makes the whole phenomenon so finely puzzling. It doesn't fit human fears or human desires or hopes. That makes me believe that they are a completely external element in the universe, which has its own needs, its own patterns of behavior. They are doing terrible things to humans only by accident. In other words, the trauma that happens and the physical problems, I don't think are intended, but they do occur.
But is this proof? Besides marks on the body, what is real?
I collect, for instance, drawings that people make of certain symbols that they've seen inside the craft, certain like writing, never been published. I have about 35 examples that are virtually identical. And I have had now 3 times when someone has made a drawing for me of symbols, of writing. You have no idea what it means. But they've seen writing inside a craft. When they were finished making the drawing, I have shown them other samples of other people's identical to theirs. And in all 3 cases, the people have burst into tears because it was too upsetting to have that confirmation. They didn't want it to be true either.
Your total self, to let in...
Certainly these things are so upsetting, in spite of the proof offered by Hopkins. It's better to deny them. Professor John Mack, lecturer in psychology at Harvard, was involved in the case of Hopkins. In the beginning, Mack was skeptical, but later studied 50 other cases.
The experiences of the abductees are entirely real. I have no reason to believe or to conclude that anything different than what they report has occurred. My field is psychiatry. I did not write a word on this subject until I had spent 2 years working with over 50 people, spent hundreds of hours, and concluded that they were telling the truth, that these were real experiences, that what had occurred to them in some cases was deeply disturbing, in some cases was quite enlightening for them.
There are in fact many cases in which after taking of the organic sample, an important human-like alien showed the kidnapped victims the danger which faced humanity. In many witnesses, it has provoked an internal transformation.
By demonstrating that we are in connection or in relationship to some other intelligence, the source of which we do not know, but which reaches us with a certain vigor, reaches apparently hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. This invites us to open up to the universe, to a far more interesting, more alive, more expanded sense of ourselves and the universe in which we live. And if the work can open us to that possibility, I think that's the most important aspect of it.